Well, welcome everybody. Feels like we're on the bridge here, but it feels pretty good, doesn't it? Welcome to the monthly meeting of the Caldwell Urban Renewal Agency. It's June 10th at 6 p.m. and we will ask our secretary to call the roll, please.
Commissioner Porter?
Here.
Commissioner Doty?
Here.
Commissioner Warwick?
Here.
Commissioner Brooks is absent. Commissioner Moore?
Here.
Commissioner Allgood?
Here.
Commissioner Garcia?
Here. Very good. Thanks, one and all. Don't believe we have any special presentations tonight. And that will bring us to a conflict of interest declaration. Is there anything on our agenda this evening that creates a conflict of interest with any of the commissioners? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to public comments. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to address the commission on an item that is not on our agenda this evening? Okay, that takes us to our consent calendar. Do we have a motion in regard to the consent calendar?
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Warwick.
I move we approve the consent calendar.
Okay, we have a motion by a second by Mr. Doty. Any conversation or questions? Okay, would the secretary call the roll?
Commissioner Warwick?
Yes.
Commissioner Moore?
Yes.
Commissioner Allgood?
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia?
Yes.
Commissioner Porter?
Yes.
Commissioner Doty?
Yes.
Very good. Brings us to our update reports. First up is a report on RRC. I don't see Mr. Cooper here this evening. I know he was planning to be here.
Is he the one who's 20 minutes late?
Excuse me?
Ann Kunkel is the representative for which?
Is he in traffic?
That's, yeah, he might be, but Ann was talking about Dean Pepe.
Oh, got it, okay.
It looks like there was a dean that joined the call remotely.
Okay.
So yes, and that's Dean. Just so I'm sorry to interject. This is Ann Kunkel with Barron Thomas. Yes, Dean has joined the call just to listen because they are stuck in traffic. So he's on Teams as well.
Very good. Thank you, Ann. Well, we will forego Mr. Cooper with the RRC contractors, the Norman Jewelers project there, and go right to TS Developments. Welcome, Sean.
Is this thing working?
Get it hit
Yep.
that. Turn it green. There you go.
There we go, perfect. So since our last meeting, our update is we had a roundtable with the city, kind of went over all the permitting and potential concerns and building code, and there was, Chairman Porter was there was real no concerns. It was pretty much just informational. They knew what our project was and what we were doing. And then other than that, really, it's kind of our next milestone that we've mentioned for the last few meetings was conveying the property and basically getting over that hurdle. And that's on the agenda next as an action item. So I can wait until that's up. But did you have any questions about anything else in general on our project?
Thank you, Sean. Any questions for Sean?
Okay.
Great.
And obviously, if you want me to speak on the next thing, I'll wait my turn.
Thank you. And again, thanks for being here. We
Yep.
appreciate that. We take note of that.
All right, thank you.
Brings us to our first item of old business. It's an action item to consider resolution approving the final construction documents and waiving certain closing conditions for the aforementioned development. Mr. Hilty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, Commissioners. There's two items on this resolution. So as we were working, or as my office was working with Mr. Mabin, reviewing the DDA as a prefatory to closing, there was a couple things that are, I think, more or less housekeeping matters that needed to be addressed. The first one is Section 7.5 of the DDA provides that the agency has to approve the final construction documents. Unlike some of the other projects we've had, I think the plans that were originally proposed have not changed in substance the whole time. But in order to cross this off the list, the resolution is the approval of the final construction, basically design documents, which are attached as Exhibit A. The second component is a waiver of one of the closing conditions. And the closing condition provided that building permits would be ready for issuance at the time of closing. I've been talking with Mr. Mabin for some time. The request is to push that back until after closing. The issuance of the building permit requires final design documents, which are very expensive to obtain. He can address, some of those estimated costs, but I think they run into the six figures. The plan is for TS Development to finalized design with the permanent project financing, which of course would only be available after closing. So it'd be a waiver. They obviously will have to have building permits in order to build. They will have to have permits and build what they say they're going to build in order to remain in compliance with DDA. So we're not telling them that they have any substantive relief from the requirements. It's a timing issue. And so that's the request, and that's embodied here in this resolution as well. I would stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hilty. Questions for Mr. Hilty?
Mr. Chair.
Doty.
Mr. Hilty, is there, in case TS development does not come through, even after everything's approved, and let's say they decide to pull the plug in 6 months and go, I'm not building anything, are we secure that the land would come back to either urban renewal or the city?
Yes.
If they do not do that, unlike the Tillian project or the DeChase project?
There's been some noise about that in the DeChase project associated with the fact that it's a two-phase development. This is not a two-phase development, so, and I'm not sure that I agree with their assessment on that. I'm not concerned about it in this transaction.
Thank you.
Other questions for Mr. Hilty? Very good, thank you. Well, it does come as an action item, so what is the desire of the commission in regard to the resolution?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Doty?
did you want to add any more, or?
If you needed me to add any more, I certainly could.
Do we have any other questions for Mr. Mabon?
I would just like to hear what's going on. Yeah, if you would just take a minute, I would
Yeah.
appreciate it.
That's fine. So essentially, kind of what this request is more or less trying to wrap all of the costs into project-specific financing. And the last estimate we had for design work was about $250,000, and that would be kind of wrapped into the financing. And that's typically how this would flow through. And with regard to Commissioner Doty's question, it's actually in section 7.9. I believe it says, before we get a building permit, then you guys get the property back for what we paid for it, which obviously we know what that is, and it's not really anything right now. And then after, I think we get a permit, then it's a reasonable value of whatever we put into it. So that's kind of where we're at. I don't know if you had any other questions.
No, that's what I wanted, yeah.
Okay,
Okay. Thank you.
very good, thank you.
Thank you, Sean.
So what is the
Mr.
commission's? Mr.
I'll make a motion that we approve the final construction documents and waiving certain closing conditions for the TS Development LLC project at 510 Arthur Street.
I would second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Doty, a second by Mr. Moore. Any other comments or questions? Okay, would the secretary call the roll?
Commissioner Doty,
Yes?
Commissioner Warwick,
Yes.
Commissioner Moore,
Yes.
Commissioner Allgood,
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia,
Yes.
Commissioner Porter.
Yes. Very good. Brings us to our first item of new business in regard to a site-specific urban renewal district. And I believe Mr. Jenkins is going to enlighten us. Good evening, Mr. Jenkins.
Thank you, Chairman, Commissioners. Thank you for having me this evening. I really appreciate it. I'm going to pull up my PowerPoint because I don't have a screen in front of me anymore. So,
Mr. Chair, also the lower button, not the off button or the power button, but if you hit that, it'll move that screen onto your screen in front of you.
right. Maybe I can do it the hard way. I can look to the side here. That works too. All right, Marlon, can you go to the next one for me? Okay, so the agenda really quickly is urban renewal refresher. Just talk a little bit about what we are hoping to achieve with this site-specific plan. And then the property under consideration, of course, we'll talk a little bit more about the details related to that property. And then the details and plan that are proposed for the property under this site-specific urban renewal plan. And then lastly, the final thoughts and takeaways from this commission, as well as answer any questions that you might have that perhaps are lingering after some of the comments are made this evening. So I'll go to the next one, Marlon. So urban renewal, and I chose this picture almost deliberately, and hopefully we can refer to it in the end here. But this is an old photo of a building downtown, and quite frankly, I wish I would have purchased the building in this state. And I was at Missouri State writing papers, I think, at this time. But if I were here, I would have loved to have jumped on that opportunity because now it looks completely different. That's, I think, attributed to this commission and the benefits of urban renewal. So just going to the next slide really quickly and just going through some of this verbiage here. Urban renewal is an economic development tool that essentially eliminates and cleans up blight. And that's the focal point here. So it aims to just target distressed areas that are economically distressed, and they go through public investments that encourage private development. So the theory is that, of course, the commission would propose and allow for their investments to come in, and then the private developer will come in behind and provide a development that would encourage more economic activity around the area. So public investment can be crucial in supporting and enabling private investment. Once private development becomes economically viable, investment returns to the area. As physical and economic conditions improve, further private investment is stimulated, strengthening the local economy. Urban renewal investments often enhance the economic viability, livability, and environmental sustainability of the broader city. And it has done just that in the city of Caldwell. We are not the same anymore, and our reputation has changed tremendously in the valley. And again, that is a direct component of some of the investment that's made by urban renewal. So here, I'm going to talk on the next 3 bullet points in reference specifically to a site-specific plan. By designating a site-specific area of interest, the agency is concentrating efforts on developing the parcel and facilitating that development through the use of urban renewal. Urban renewal helps control development at the site. For example, preference is given to projects that enhance street vitality and are complementary with and active mixed uses. So that's actually a direct quote from a previous RFP, request for proposals. So again, we have the ability to dictate how the site is developed. And then lastly, a site-specific plan uses the property's increment to make improvements to the site. This will also allow the agency to work alongside a developer to bring the highest and best use project to the property. And then just going to the next one, Marlon. So this one's at 119 South Kimball. It's currently under the ownership of the Urban Renewal Agency. And these are the 2 photos. Of course, it's right across from the plaza. And I'll talk in greater detail in the next couple slides here. So just giving you an aerial view of the property, you all can see that obviously the property in its entirety is not owned by the agency. Only that little square, that hard corner there on Arthur and Kimball. And that is a very prominent corner of downtown, as you all can imagine and can acknowledge. It's right across the street from Indian Creek Plaza, and it's in the direct proximity of a lot of activity and action that we hope to create in downtown Caldwell. The next slide. So property details, it is approximately 4,500 square feet total. So not a huge site, but certainly workable. The site has been vacant, unoccupied for many years. I've been here since 2019, and I think I've gone through 3 proposals that were awarded for that property. So still waiting patiently to see that property get developed, but I'm very hopeful. So the former Mr. C's site and Caldwell Recreation Building, do you all remember when that was the Caldwell Recreation? I'm sure you'll remember the Mr. C's. So that building was, of course, demolished and prepared for development here. And in the course of doing that, the site was cleared and just rectified in terms of just eliminating some of the issues with the site. I think there were some things underground that need to be removed. That had all been accomplished through that demolition process. So the site is prepared and ready to go for the most part. So it's near a main attraction in downtown Caldwell, the Indian Creek Plaza. The last RFP was due on September 1st, 2021, which was a very long time ago. Surveying completed recently, and when I say recently, I think it was in reference to the previous proposal that was accepted for that property. And then the next steps, I would like to recommend a shortened time frame for a plan, perhaps a 5-year horizon or something similar. We would do perhaps an in-house feasibility study on the site that could be conducted. So instead of going with a third-party vendor, in this case, or operator, we would use some of our resources in finance to accomplish this single site that in reference to the value of the site today and then the projected values over that horizon for the 5-year time frame. And then the proposed RFP could be in August or early September, and in talking to Mr. Hilty, perhaps it may be a little beyond that point, but regardless, just the process that would perhaps allow us to get this off the ground or at least executed by the end of the year would be great, just because I didn't hear my last bullet point. We actually have early interest from a developer that would like to develop the property. And I believe that there may be some other interest as well if we were to put this out for RFP. So just want to capture that early interest and make sure that we can get a potential development there. The next slide there. So again, just speaking about the first photo, one of the first photos I showed, and to now you guys can see the transformational effects, I think, of urban renewal, especially as it pertains to that building. And that picture showcases that, I think, pretty well. So the last RFP concluded about 3 years ago. The site will remain vacant in a prominent section of our downtown. There is interest to do a multi-story project at the site. The RFP process will support the project by making investments in the site, and it helps to officially close out the East Caldwell Urban Renewal District, I should say, and its associated properties. And then I want to leave the balance of time for any questions that you might have or anything that I could help clarify. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jenkins. Questions for Stephen? Mr. Allgood?
Yeah, so you're wanting to do a urban renewal area in that 1/10 of an acre? And I don't know whether you or Mr. Hilty can answer this. If this board decides to do a different urban renewal area that we've talked about, can you have one inside the other?
That is a good question, Chairman, Commissioner Allgood. I would say that this would be maybe a standalone, Mr. Hilty, and then we would maybe perhaps work around this property within the parameters of a different district if it were considered. So if we were to move forward with executing a plan for this specific site, I would think that it would be excluded from any future considerations for a larger district.
Yeah, and, urban, as you're well aware, urban renewal operates on increment. And I'm just curious how much incremental value you'd get on 1/10 of an acre. How much, would turning this into a singular area be more for control than revenue raising? Is that kind of the idea?
Correct. I would anticipate this as being more of a reuse appraisal incentive that would be applicable to the site with the RFP process. As it relates to different projects that would be associated, perhaps there could be maybe some minor sidewalk improvements, but by and large, there's a lot of improvements that have already been made in and around the site. So I don't anticipate a whole lot of activity on the front of urban renewal. I think it really is more towards just the redevelopment efforts for the property.
That's all, thank you.
Mr. Doty?
Mr. Chair, I would just say I'm in support of this only because, well, not only, but certainly a point is our partner, used loosely, next door. I don't know when or if he'll ever move on anything, and so it's very difficult to get this piece of property moving. At least the city owns this piece of property, and we can hopefully get something moving in at least our section. Another one that didn't turn out how we hoped it would, but I'm certainly in support of this to get something moving within the city, and let's get some tax revenue headed into the account. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Other questions?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Stephen.
Mr. Moore?
So what's the project value on that 1/10?
I don't have that figure. What I would anticipate is our finance team or maybe an individual from that team would look at those values and then do a forecast for the values over that 5-year plan, that 5-year time frame, but I'm not aware at this point what the values are.
And this is going to be an open-ended RFP, right? Anybody can apply for it?
Yes, I do have a list of interested parties that have either participated or shown interest in former RFPs, and I just send it out to that list. It is, of course, a public process. It will be an open gov and anything else that we can showcase where the RFP will land.
Okay. So I'm a little bit confused here with my compass. So I thought we were looking at a 1,440 acre proposal last month. Is that completely off the table and now we're doing this, or what are we doing?
Yeah, so in looking at this plan, I am just in reviewing even the tapes and going through some of our dialogue. I noticed some hesitation with regard to the size and the scope of the plan. So in an effort to just be a little more specific and concentrate our efforts on a parcel that we know has interest immediately, I felt like this could be a good alternative to getting something established and getting some development occurring on a property that's owned by the Urban Renewal Commission.
Okay. And then I guess my last question, wasn't there an issue with a transformer or by the alley or getting services or something to that? What kind of expense is going to be there?
So we only own the hard corner on Kimball and Arthur. So in this case, the alley section is owned by a different individual. And this property wouldn't have anything to do with that alley or the transformer or,
It wouldn't have any issue?
no issue there.
No, I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Steve, I have a question. If the reuse appraisal is done in-house, could we have a presence on that work team? I know we have some pretty sharp financial minds that like to see how the sausage is made, so to speak. Would that be possible?
Chairman, I believe what I would think would happen is there would be a value that would be assessed for the property, and then the projections for how things would materialize over however long this plan exists. But the reuse appraisal process, I think there is an entity that is more than willing to work with the agency on that. So I think that perhaps would be something that we would partner with another entity on. I don't know if we can do that in-house because it is a specialized process.
I see.
Mark, or Mr. Hilton, you might correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Valbridge, just being a specialty group that really focuses on this, I think they might be the group to look at.
I think specifically whatever's done in-house, could we watch how matters like this are processed through the entire system? Give us a better view of the workflow.
Absolutely, I'd hope so, and I'd encourage it. I think the more we're involved in the process and engaged, the better.
Okay. And second question, have the people that have shown interest, have they had any talks with the little salon that's adjacent to this property?
They have, and they've also talked to the immediate property owner. They haven't had any success in acquiring the property, but they are interested in it. And I think as even this RFP process as a whole, once we present the property to the development community, my hope is that we even garner further interest beyond that point.
Okay, very good. All right, that just came as a discussion item. You don't need any kind of decision from us this evening?
If you can just give me a nod or a wink or a thumbs up, I can take that as a go and run and proceed with in good faith.
Okay,
I believe you have that.
very good.
That
Thank
sounds
you.
great. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
Takes us to our action item number 2. It's to consider invoices for payment. And hello.
Back out. I was wondering if I should sit down again or just stay up here, but I just wanted to add a little suspense to the evening. So I'm gonna do my best impression of Raylyn this evening, and I did meet with her prior to this meeting. So any numbers that I'm off on or anything like that, actually I should be okay. Let's just start there. I should be okay. I'm gonna have a strong foundation. So I'd first like to cover the URA invoices for the month of May, and we have 4 in total, and you all have them in front of you. So the first is $55,000 for Project 28. The second is $18,900 for the May Economic Development Contribution. The third is $6,435 for May Attorney Services. And then lastly, we have $50,186.49 for Project 30. This comes to a grand total of $130,521.49. And I'll stop there, I think.
Very good. At this point, I'm going to ask Mr. Dittenberg if he would step up and talk to us for a little bit about the $55,000 requested for Project 28 and the move of the Rice House and what has happened to your project.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, thanks for giving me an opportunity to speak. I'll try to answer any questions you may have. I don't think you have the full information here in front of you, but we came to the Urban Renewal Agency about 18 months ago with a request for some assistance to help move the historic John C. Rice House. We are well on our way to making that move happen, and if you haven't been to the corner of Kimball and Chicago, you should go there, and there's a big hole in the ground, a nice, pretty big hole in the ground, and we look forward to having a foundation there here soon. Between the time that we made the original request for the foundation work and the time that we got our first contract to complete the foundation, the cost had escalated about $88,000. So in about an 18-month time period, the cost has increased. However, we are moving forward. We're beyond the point where we can turn back, and we're moving forward. We're using much of our own I guess, savings in our own capital to make the house move. But we're coming to you with a request for $55,000, knowing that there's probably a little bit more than what was originally anticipated coming forth in a future reimbursement request. So that is it.
Any questions for Mr. Dittenber?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Doty?
who's playing Raylan tonight, Steve or Mike?
Stephen is.
So you know my next question, of course. Where's the 55 coming from? Are we good, or are you able to answer that tonight? Or I would assume Raylan wouldn't put it in here if it wasn't, but normally I like to ask that just for the record and for our constituents out there that know where the money's coming from. So
I appreciate that question. I'll follow up with Ray Lynn just to ensure that I have the right information, and I'll follow up with all the commissioners after this meeting.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Doty, can I answer that question real quick? We've only requested $27,000. This is the second request of
Okay.
$55,000.
Of the
So
original.
we're still within our original request
Okay.
amount. So at draw number 3 and draw number 4, we anticipate we would exceed that. We'd exceed that amount.
perfect. That helps me. Thank you.
Mr. Moore?
I was basically going to third what he just said. I mean, I remember the math and what she said she was going to bring that from. I guess I have a question for you, Mike. Sorry. I have a question. So just living down there, riding my bike by there, ran into a couple of people that were holding on to the fence. And we got to talking. I pulled over and looked at it myself, and then we got to talking. The question came up, you know, we're restoring something, moving it, and we're going to add to this area. Of course, we're going to add to that area. Thank you. But then the question came up, why don't we just put up something else that's probably more cost efficient? How would you answer that?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I answer that quite frequently. So when we did the math and reached out to a local builder about building a sixplex and additionally another sixplex for a total of a 12plex on there, it came out to about $300 per square foot for new construction. When we're talking about moving the Rice House, it came in at about $277 per square foot to relocate it, because we were given the Rice House in exchange for some labor work that we did for the college. So right now, cost-wise, it's coming in cheaper to move the house than it is to build new there. The other thing, Commissioner Moore, is people really want to get behind saving old things. They really don't care about building new things. No offense.
Historical value. Yeah.
But, you know,
Can't put a
so
price on that.
everyone's, you know, I talk with people all the time, and I can't tell you how many people every week say, my wife and I dreamt about what it would be like to live in that house, or we're glad something's being done with that. So just the energy and the excitement around moving one of Caldwell's oldest and most historic houses it's better than building new.
Yeah, I agree with that. And when you're done there, can you go across the street, fix that one across the way there? That'd be a real nice surprise.
We would love to go across the street, if not buy the place across the street, at least give them a bigger paintbrush.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Dittenber? Very good. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, any other questions on these items?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Allgood?
I would move that we accept the invoices as presented.
I second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Allgood, second by Mr. Garcia. Any further comments? Would the secretary call the roll?
Commissioner Allgood,
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia,
Yes.
Commissioner Porter,
Yes.
Commissioner Doty,
Yes,
sorry,
it's okay.
Commissioner Warwick,
Yes.
Commissioner Moore.
Yes.
Very good. Brings us to our treasurer report. Welcome again.
Thank you, appreciate it. Okay, so this pertains to the bank reconciliation and cash reporting. You can see that we ended the month just shy of $5 million. We had interest of $8,017.72, so that's slowly going down from the previous months. And then regarding the increments, we received $207.36 from the north allocation area, and then from the east, we received some past dues totaling $727.84. that is what I have for the reconciliation report there, unless there are any questions.
Okay, any questions for the second string? Do we have a motion in regard to those invoices?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Doty?
I'll make a motion, we approve the monthly cash reconciliation reports.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Doty, second by Ms. Warwick. Any questions? Would the secretary call the roll?
Commissioner Doty,
Yes.
Commissioner Warwick,
Yes.
Commissioner Commissioner Moore,
Yes.
Commissioner Allgood,
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia,
Yes.
Commissioner Porter.
Yes. Very good, thank you. Moving on, an update report on our current project list.
So in this regard, Raylene will have an updated projects report next month, and we'll bring forward a resolution to close out the final budgets. I do know that if there are any questions, I can surely pass them along, and if there's anything that's specific to what you all have in front of you today, maybe there's someone here, perhaps Mr. McDonald can help answer some questions, but that is all I have in terms of the Treasury and Finance report.
Okay. Any questions for Stephen? Very good, thank you, Stephen.
Thank you so much, and Chairman, thank you for that second string reference. I was thinking third or fourth string, but I'll take second string all day, so I appreciate that.
Good job, Stephen.
Very good.
Good job.
Okay, Stephen, you're up again. It's the Economic Development Activity Report.
First string now.
Yeah, you're a first stringer now.
Yeah,
Ms.
first string,
Warwick
I'm
said.
back. I'm back to the starting lineup here. I appreciate that. Okay, back in my comfort zone. So miscellaneous updates, as I typically do. Project Magic, we're working closely with this user that would bring a national restaurant to the area and serve as an anchor in East Caldwell. Project Micro, that we're working with this hotel group to identify an interstate hotel opportunity. The initial conversations have been strong as they continue to review the market, and they are actually visiting later this month, so that's a positive sign from this user. Project Fund, family fun entertainment concept, and discussions with a property owner for the purchase of land in East Caldwell. This project will provide entertainment for families within the Caldwell community. Project Bingle, they're a big box retailer. We met with this group at the ICSC conference, had a productive conversation regarding their site plan and the goals for developing the site of interest. This is a 2026 projected project, so a little ways out, but still making great progress in that effort to get that property of interest developed. Project Paces is a big box retailer moving forward with plans on a site in East Caldwell. They have conducted environmental research on the property of interest in preparation for construction in early 2025. Project Spot, they're continuing to research the area. The broker and city continue to work closely to bring this big box retailer to the market. They have a strong interest in the primary site in East Caldwell. Project Suite, working with a developer from the Midwest that has an active offer on a site. They are hoping to bring an interstate hospitality project to Caldwell that will provide more hotel rooms to the area. And then Project Razorback, fast casual eatery that recently toured Caldwell. They are interested in a future location alongside an anchor grocer or another big box user. They continue to have an interest in the Caldwell community. Project Rogers, big box user that is working to get a 30-acre property under contract in East Caldwell. This project will bring a large number of jobs and shopping opportunities to the East Caldwell region. And then lastly, Project Fortune. This fast casual eatery is actively searching for a location in East Caldwell. They have inquired about 4 primary sites with a strong interest in one. I actually had a chance to meet with this group also at the ICSC conference, and they're very optimistic about Caldwell and what they can bring to our market.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but before you moved on, you've said East Caldwell on a number of these. Can you be slightly more specific what East Caldwell is?
Yes, Commissioner Allgood, if you're going to twist my arm here, yes, Highway 2026 is really the area of focus for a lot of these users, predominantly off of exit 29 to the east.
Okay.
Is where a lot of these folks are looking.
I was going between that and Highway 55 and Florida area kind of thing. I was trying to decide where we were at, but this is all, well, somewhat 2026.
Yes, and you do have some of that flavor. I would say as Highway 55 comes into form, you're going to see a lot of activity, commercial activity on that corridor as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for clarifying that. And the last thing I have in the miscellaneous updates is Baskin-Robbins. They're working on tenant improvements for their new location in North Ranch. They're actually under construction right now on the shell building that they'll build out there in North Ranch. They're going to be located right next to Fat Guy's Fresh Deli over there, so on the other end cap. And then North Caldwell Urban Renewal area, so this is Project Roof. This is an expansion project for a Caldwell-based business that will be expanding into North Caldwell. They are working with R&M Steel on a pre-engineered building product that will feature 2,000 square feet of office space. The project will add an additional 16 employees. Really excited about that one. Project Jazz, we continue to work with this project as they look to break ground later this year. This will be a trucking use. And then the Canyon Springs RV, they recently added about 20 RV pads and will be adding more in the near future. So they're looking at adding more in 2025 and then hoping to get their full build out by 2026. And they would be over 200 pads over there at Canyon Springs, which is a vast amount. And then the last thing I like to do, as you all know, is additional updates just to get you guys caught up with the market and where the economy is at today. So in 2023, a record 5.5 million business applications were submitted in the U.S. While the pandemic-induced surge has slowed, the monthly average remains 80% above the previous decade, so think 2014-ish. The next bullet point is, according to Atlanta's Fed wage growth tracker, U.S. wage gains are slowing but remain above pre-COVID levels. And just to be a little more specific, they're at 0.4% month over month and 4.1% increase year over year. So wage growth is continuing to occur. And then consumer spending remains above its pre-pandemic trend. And I like this graph here that's hopefully recognized on your sheet, but it shows tax burden by state. 2024, I hear a lot about property taxes here in Caldwell. So I like to show this list just to give perspective. We're right in the middle of the pack in terms of the United States. The tax burden measures the percent of an average person's income that is paid towards state and local taxes. It considers property taxes, income taxes, sales and excise tax. The highest is in New York. Luckily, we're not there. And lowest is in Alaska. So Idaho is 7.9%, which is below Utah at 9.4%, and Colorado 8.4%. So next time you guys hear complaints about property taxes, just refer to this map. Point out a few of the states that are neighboring to Idaho. And then another couple things I wanted to mention. So these are new reports, so I apologize for not including them in your packet of information. But JP Morgan came out with an analysis of the U.S. labor market. The U.S. labor market added 272,000 jobs in May. There were 165,000 in April, so that was quite an increase from what we saw that month. And the national unemployment rate ticked up to 4% in May. That's the highest level it's been since January 2022. So very interesting economy at this point. Tremendously difficult to forecast and to read, but I think we're in a pretty good spot, especially as we consider Caldwell. So that's all I have, unless there are any questions for me.
Questions for Steve?
Mr. Chairman, I think jobs are starting to become important now. It's going to be a new fad.
Very good.
Absolutely.
You're ready for a career as a newscaster.
Thank you.
You're welcome, I think.
Thank you.
Ophelia. Good evening.
Hope you can hear me. Good evening, Chairperson, Commissioners. Add to Stephen's updates. So Project Gem, just a couple updates. Project Gem and Project V. Just continue to assist them in looking for new space. It is a challenge, of course, around the plaza to find vacant space when it comes to retail. All my new projects will be under office space. A lot of office space, individuals that are looking for office space. I was just chatting with Mr. Maybon there. There's a lot of interest in regards to that type of space. So all the new projects are around that. Downtown business updates. I'll let Mark talk a little bit more about 905 Arthur Street, but I will answer any questions when it comes to 905 Arthur Street, just that there's flexible, the lease is a little bit more flexible these days there for that specific space. Operator Coffee, they did have a ribbon cutting in the month of May. They are having a grand opening June 14th, which is Flag Day, this Friday from 5 to 9 p.m. They're located right next to Papa John's at 3110 Cleveland Boulevard, Suite J1. Again, they roast and package coffee for purchase, so if you haven't stopped in, feel free to stop in and introduce yourself and welcome them to Caldwell. Kindred by the Creek is expanding into 616 Main Street. We're excited about that in the Tillian project. They'll be in that Tillian project, and I'm sure Mr. Dean can answer more questions for you in regards to him bringing them in. Marco's Pizza, they recently opened. They currently have a location in Ammon, Meridian, and now Caldwell. They do carry out and delivery, and they are in the former Burnt Lemon location. As you know, that space was vacant for quite a bit of time, so we're excited to have them here. Spoke with the manager last week, and they are making good progress in terms of being at where they need to be in terms of revenue, so that's exciting. First Thursdays, those are downtown business, it's a downtown business initiative by the businesses. Some businesses stay open later than usual, and this happens on the first Thursday of every month. It started in May, will go until October. Some businesses showcase local artists, wineries, and varieties of activities. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Very good. Questions for Ophelia?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Ophelia.
Mr. Moore?
So it has to do with the parking meter situation. What are you seeing in terms of people that come in and the temperature of going downtown versus not going downtown? Existing temperature of a small business
Yeah.
with current parking meters?
So
I have a story at the end of it, I want to tell you my own observation.
Yeah, absolutely. So without disclosing the name of the businesses, I'll name them by company A, B, and C here. I haven't spoken to each one of them, but the majority of them I have. And the reason why I'm not disclosing the name is some of them are afraid of being bullied or being counseled, is the language that they have used when sharing their comments with me. Company A, they've had no impact at all whatsoever. They did reference, when I followed up with these businesses right after the KTVB article that was on social media. They said they had no impact and they have no idea where that came from. And they had other comments that I will not disclose in terms of where that came from. Another business, it's a restaurant, they indicated that they have seen a 5% decrease by the locals, not necessarily by others from outside our region. However, they feel that that's fine. They said, we're okay with that 5% decrease in our locals. We feel like this is the long-term solution for downtown, so we'll get through this. The other business, another downtown business, said no impact. The impact that they have had was that they've seen new customers. Another business said no impact, just would like better education and signage is what they shared. Other business, they're in a multi sort of shared space. They shared that no impact, however, they would like their area of parking to be fixed. And it's privately owned, that area. Another business said they've had no impact on their business. They are hard workers, so they'll continue to work a way to bring more people. They're going to start offering, they're going to start validating customers parking. I had two businesses that did share that their sales have dropped by a bit. I've had another business that indicated that they would like more education. We should educate more on that free parking. Had another business that indicated that they were down less than 0.5%, so 0.27 is what they indicated. But they, again, feel that it's not necessarily due to the meters. They think it's just the time that we're in terms of economy. They shared that they've also cut back on their spending themselves, and they don't necessarily tie that to that. Had another restaurant that indicated that they've had no impact, and then another business indicating that there's rumors that they were going to shut down, and that is not the case. So anytime I hear any of these rumors, I will go down to the businesses and confirm that myself, and get that for you all. I'm happy to, if at any point you want to talk to any of these businesses, connect you all, but unfortunately I'm not going to share their names again. They've requested that not to be shared. In terms of customers, I am in downtown quite a bit, so I'm not asked for assistance in terms of when I'm walking down there. However, I will stop and assist customers down there. Some people, for me, myself, my personal experience as a resident of Caldwell, I use the app. I've used the app in Boise and other states, so it's fairly easy for me to use the app. I've had no issues with the app. I know that there's an additional service charge, just like anywhere else. When you use your credit card, there is going to be that service charge, so I haven't personally had any issues. The customers, it kind of varies, right? I've helped a customer at one of the coffee shops. They shared that the machine wasn't working, and they decided just to have their coffee, and we're going to pay for that ticket. They finished their coffee. We walked on over. I showed them step by step how to do it, and they said, oh, It really is that easy. We weren't paying attention. I've had others that have struggled with the coins, and so we've walked them step by step. The coins have worked. So just kind of depends on the user. I've had an individual who just doesn't really appreciate the meter, so just asked me if I asked if I can help. He said, yes, just please remove this meter. So it's just things that are out of my control. So it just kind of varies. It depends. I've talked to the car park themselves, so if there's any question by the businesses, I will run up to their office and post those questions. They get to answer fairly quickly. Now, they're not treated the kindest. Some of them are residents of Caldwell. They've been called awful names such as communist. So I do ask the businesses and individuals that are having an issue with the parking, if they can please be kind. We're all just trying to get by.
Well, it sounds like you have your eye on it, so thank you for that update.
Absolutely.
I think there's bigger things in the horizon too, like consumer and business credit card debt. I think that's slowed people from going out, doing a lot of things that we don't hear a lot about.
Right.
The parking, I had a great experience with it 2 weeks ago. Pulled in at noon, had lunch at TC Grit, met a customer for lunch, waited for him, put my 4 quarters in. It was great. There was no driving around looking for a spot. And my customer came in from out of town, and he complained about have to pay.
So, thank you. And I put 4 quarters in for him, and I felt like that was a bargain for the day for the two of us. I haven't had that much fun since I was a little kid. My mom gave me a dime to put in the parking meters downtown Caldwell. So I think there's pros and cons to it. And then on my way out of town, I noticed everybody parking lot across Kimball and Albany was full.
Right.
So I thought it was kind of nice to be able to pull up, and my customer who had double hip replacement a month ago, he liked the fact that he could just pull right up too. So when it was done and said, I thought it was okay. But I don't have a business down there. I don't run a business, and I don't own a building down there. So that's just my observation.
Yeah, I would say you're 50-50. Just kind of depends.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any other questions for Ophelia? Very good. Thanks so
Thank
much.
you.
And we'll bring Stephen back up. I've asked Steve if he would, as we approach another site-specific urban renewal area, if he would kind of enlighten us again on what an RFP is and does and how it works. A lot of us came into these seats with things already in place. So, Stephen, if you could kind of outline what goes into crafting an RFP, we'd appreciate it.
Yeah, Chairman, Commissioners, you guys are going to get tired of me by the end of the night here. I think this is my last time speaking, so bear with me. But Marlon, if you wouldn't mind pulling up that document. What I was hoping to do was actually go through an RFP with you, if you'd just let me go through that and walk you through step by step what it looks like. And I won't spend a tremendous amount of time on each section, but I just want to provide a brief overview of what we're looking at. And I thought it might be something neat to look at as we talked about 119 South Kimball in the previous discussion about a site-specific plan. I was like, hey, let's just pull up this RFP and look at this one because it's pretty fresh on our minds. So as we scroll down here, you'll see the introduction. And the first thing we like to do within these RFPs is introduce the property to the development community. I mean, that's essential, right? We just want to make sure that they're aware of what it looks like, and also the surrounding, the area around it. So we try to acquaint the developer or the prospect with the downtown environment and what we're looking for. Within the third sentence, it refers to financial capacity and a workable planning and business framework. So early on in the process, we let folks know, hey, we want to make sure and verify that financial capacity is in place. And then I want to note, as I mentioned before to Commissioner Moore, I do have a list of prospects that I send this information to, and other groups that are interested can certainly reach out to me, and I'll gladly put them on that list. But we just try to get it in as many developers' hands as we can, just to provide this opportunity and let them know that we're open for business, and we have this great prospect of great property downtown that we would love for them to look at and investigate for development opportunities. And then the final sentence in the introduction refers to the disposition and development agreement. You've heard this referenced a number of times in meetings such as this, which we worked through in good faith with the agency, between the agency and the developer. And the next section there is about the agency. And this about the agency just explains the East Caldwell, well, previously it was the East Caldwell Urban Renewal Agency. And although that's now sunset, of course, it still exists, but in reference to that, there were some points mentioned in this proposal, in this RFP. And then some of the prior investments are referenced as well. And it also refers to a 6-member board of commissioners. I know you are 7 now, but as this was dated back to 2021, that was something that was mentioned there. And as we go to the next page, you'll see that there's a section that says about the property and incentive. In this section, we provide the intimate details of the property. So we provide the size, the dimensions, some of the details that are related to that property, what we're looking for. It also adds details about access, infrastructure, utilities, zoning, all those things. So it talks about being shovel-ready, if there's water and sewer to the site, those things that developers often take note of as they prepare to have interest in something. The development incentive is also referred to here, and I think that's down a little bit there, Marlon, on the next page as you scroll down. Let's see. Yep, right there, development incentive. And this just speaks to the reuse appraisal process. I think it's prudent to acknowledge that in this area, there's an important sentence that I found valuable. So the terms of the sale will prohibit acquisition of the unimproved property for resale or speculation, and the preferred developer must construct improvements that are subject to real property taxes for a minimum of 20 years. So in other words, a developer can't come in and just prospect the property and say, well, I might have an interest in that, or I might think about doing something there, or, I'll hold on to it until I can sell it off for a profit, or whatever the case is. And that's not true in these scenarios. We make sure that, of course, they're vetted, and we put that information in there so folks are aware that this is a very active process towards development. And of course, I love the reference to real property taxes for a minimum of 20 years. You all can see that it's a bare lot owned by the agency, and there's no property taxes being generated. So the notion of taxes being generated, property taxes for 20 years is quite positive for the city and also the surrounding community. And then as we go down to evaluation criteria, this is summarized in about 9 steps. There's some pretty pictures in there that I like to put in there. But as you go down a little bit more, Marlon, sorry. There's the pretty pictures again. Right there. So there's 9 steps. The first is historic context. This is cohesion with the character of downtown in accordance with the Downtown Framework Master Plan. We share that document with prospects that are interested so that they understand some of the aesthetic elements that need to go into the project. Number 2 is a development timeline. We have a preference that's referenced here towards expediency. Number 3 is financial capacity. This shows the financial ability and track record of financing to complete its proposal, which includes a bank letter and a preliminary development financing sources. Number 4, proposed uses, and this just refers to active ground floor uses. Number 5 is pedestrian-friendly design. This includes sidewalk enhancements, how this building may connect to the walkability of the downtown, those types of things. Number 6 is scale, so 2-story innovative projects are preferred. Number 7 is parking, so the project has to refer to how they're gonna park folks or what they're thinking to try to tie into an urban parking approach. Number 8 is investment, so we consider the property tax implications here, and we have a preference for a project that will increase the surrounding values. And then lastly, at number 9, catalyst potential. And catalyst potential is the highest and best use projects that enable future investment to occur. So how does this project induce activity around the site? So that's something that we consider as well. And then lastly, the submission, second to last, submission requirements. The RFP then outlines submission requirements there. You can see that there's a request for a certain number of copies, email, hard copy, all those details. It gives obviously the due date for the RFPs, for the RFP process. It just refers to the essentials that are tied to the overall scope of the RFP. And then the last thing that I want to take note of is at the bottom there's some terms and conditions, but as you go to the bottom, Marlon, sorry about that. Yep, right there's Exhibit A and B, so you see some legal references, and then the property itself, which is an aerial view. Sometimes we'll put the dimensions in there as well, just to clarify exactly how large the site is. But we showcase what that looks like in the 2 exhibits there. So I know that was very quick, and RFPs are much more extensive than that, but I just want to give a high-level overview of what the process entails and answer any questions that I could while I'm here.
Very good. Questions? Mr. Allgood?
Yeah, I have a couple. Marlon, can you go back a couple pages, please? There you go, right there, thank you. Well, maybe that's not the right page. The response page, is that one forward?
Yes, you just keep going up. Marlon, I'm sorry about that. One more, I think. Nope.
The other way,
Up the other
yeah.
way.
There you go.
Yeah.
No, we'll go, there you go, right there.
Oh.
So, when proposed developers submit a RFP, or submit a response to the RFP, do they typically include a timeline of how fast they think they can accomplish the task?
They do. Chair, Commissioner, all good. You'll see under development phasing timeline. So that is a requirement of a proposal to showcase how the project is going to unfold and what they anticipate for the timeframes in which that development will occur. So that is a requirement within the submission guidelines.
So when we do an RFP on this piece of property, when we were talking about doing it earlier, you were talking about shortening the time considerably for this small piece of property, and I assume that would be part of the RFP, is that we're on a shorter timeline?
Correct, and I would say that the developers typically will lay out whether it be in a phased approach or a single development, a single phase. But yes, under those conditions, what we would do is just explain that, and there is notes of in the RFP process or RFP document, there is preference toward development that occurs sooner than later, more or less. But we can be more as specific as we need to within the RFP process.
And then the last question, will this body have some input on that RFP before it goes out?
Yes, so as it relates to just details or things like that, or specificity, certainly.
I would just like it somewhat different from the previous one that was there, so that's why I was asking.
Yeah, makes sense.
Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you.
Other questions?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Stephen.
Mr. Moore?
So the financial commitment piece, I've said in these meetings, across the way over here, developer will say.
Thank you. Developer will say, I'm working on that financial piece, that commitment from my bank. It seems to me that if I was going to apply for an RFP, that I would already have my plans approved with my lender, and would have that somewhat ironed out. It seems like we're missing something in that part. We're missing something that we're not requiring something up front. I mean, we can have a letter. I've seen one letter from a bank, and I think it was a six-figure letter. So, I mean, that could be $100,000 or that could be $900,000 in commitment on a project that was well into the millions. So how do we eliminate that confusion? Because I just heard it here recently from somebody that presented, and I was astonished and took it to the chairman. Why wouldn't we have that, that commitment already nailed down in financing?
So Chairman, Commissioner Moore, great question, and I would answer that a couple of ways. So Marlon, I have one additional document, and you mind pulling that out for me? So I just have a sample bank letter that I was able to pull up, and I redacted it. Sorry, it looks like a 3-year-old just scribbled black marker all over it, but I just want to make sure to protect the sensitivity of the actual reference to the individual. But it speaks to, this is the general letter that we require up front, and this, to me, bodes well for credibility. So it allows us to understand that this individual or development company has the reputation through a financial institution to actually execute on a project. And most times they'll reference some history or context to allow us more trust and affirmation that one can deliver on a project. So that's kind of the first step. Because the disposition and development agreement process takes time to mature, and of course in that time frame things invariably will change or potentially can change, not to the degree that obviously it would be a completely different project, but there are little nuances that would be subject to change. And because of that, I think the specificity comes at a later point where you have a specific project nailed down, and it talks to obviously the banking, the financial piece comes in, and that's where we require that secondary piece of confirmation that's tied to a project financially. But that's just my thought on it. This is the upfront piece that allows one to recognize that they're serious about the process and that they can undertake, at least financially, they can undertake what they're potentially proposing And then, of course, the specificity comes a little later. And Mr. Hilty, I don't know if I explained that thoroughly, but maybe you can add a few more details to what I explained.
No, Stephen, I think you explained it well. So the RFP responses historically have been basically conceptual type proposals. And I think, as we've reviewed those, when you see a letter like this, that's helpful. The other thing that is required is portfolio, similar projects. And so when you have a development team that comes forward with, a letter from a bank talking about the quality of their relationship together with projects of similar scope that have previously been completed, that's sort of the sense we're looking for, have historically looked for in that first RFP response. The subsequent piece that you probably heard about lately was, as you get ready to build, having your actual financing in place for that. And it is a two-step process, the first step being far more conceptual, then ultimately getting, down to actual proof of project financing. And it does accommodate changes that can occur between the original concept and then what actually is going to get built. So again, that's a rundown, I think, Stephen, of what we have traditionally done. There was a head nod on a site-specific RFP or urban renewal location, and so we may have another one here in the next few months that I think certainly the commissioners can take a look at and see how it comes together, and we can talk about whether the process in the past has been sufficient.
So, yeah, this specific letter here, this 108 East Plaza, I managed this bank for 8 or 9 years. I think I created this letter. So, and I think the person that came in behind me used this. How do you feel about a checklist up front? Are your specs and plans, have they been approved? Have they been looked at? Have they been reviewed? The cost of the project, has that been reviewed up front? It just seems like there needs to be a little bit more due diligence and a little bit more transparency on the developer side on the initial presentation, to me. So how do you guys feel about that? Versus later on.
Personally, Commissioner Moore, I'm okay with adding any additional elements to this process that we need to. Of course, we've had some successful proposals come through and materialize quite well, and we've had others that have not solidified. So we're always open to suggestions and improving our processes and making sure that we get a project off the ground. And I've actually taken it a step further beyond what I have listed here, but I've put my investigator hat on and try to do a little, internet research on folks if I'm not familiar with the group that is proposing, just because we've had some history with folks that have not delivered. So just making sure that we can cross all those things off, but having a checklist is certainly something we can look at.
So what you're doing, would that be something like if it was a privately funded deal? You'd get on and research that?
Yes, absolutely. And honestly, just having the credibility of maybe a local developer, perhaps they're out of state and we're not familiar with them, so just making sure that they're credible and before we get too far along in the process.
Yeah, I just think there needs to be a little bit more something done up front so that it's a little bit more clear of what they're getting into. And no more wasted time. Thank you.
Sure, and if it's helpful, I could share this hard copy with you, this RFP process, and perhaps if you wouldn't mind just providing suggestions, we can see what we can incorporate and go with that.
I've got one more quick question here. What's the process of getting these RFPs into developers' hands and getting them out to the general public? Is that just a general email? Is it a certain list that you guys have? Take me through that.
So, Commissioner, I have an internal list that I send these RFPs out to, but we also post it on OpenGov, and I typically like to post it. Historically, I posted it on our city page as well under economic development. So we have a couple of outlets that we provide, and within the information that I send out, I just send out a link to, in this case, would be the OpenGov.com website, and the direct link to the proposal.
Thank you. I don't have any more questions. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Doty?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just support Commissioner Moore. I think sometimes we get to see a bunch of pretty pictures and we award an RFP and then they're right back here saying we can't afford what we showed you on there and they've won the RFP. And then it becomes very difficult as emotions get involved to deny them to most of the time reduce that property or shrink it down to something they didn't promise, but yet they beat out maybe someone that really did show us all that the bank would loan or all the bank that would afford. So certainly Commissioner Moore has some experience in that area, and I welcome just some more checks and balances and something other than just a bunch of pretty pictures on a screen that says we're able to accomplish this with just a letter like this. I mean, not that I've written bank letters, but I've written several letters like this myself for employees, and this is just a general letter saying, yeah, he's a great guy and he comes and banks here and he pays his bills.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean that it approves anything about what they're about to build next, so I would support that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Great, thanks for
right,
that
thank you.
overview, Steve. Brings us to our attorney reports, and Mr. Hilty, welcome again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to turn the microphone over pretty quickly to Dean Pape, who's here to talk about Phase 2 of the Tillian project. I'm going to give it a little bit of background. I think you're all aware this spring we've had a couple of video conferences with Dean and his team to explore the possibility of an amendment to the DDA for Phase 2. We have not been successful, at least to the extent that we're, as a team or staff, able to recommend anything to you. But I think it's apparent that Dean and his folks are still trying. He's got something to discuss with you tonight. I found out about it late last week in some emails, and I really don't know the details. So I'm just really going to turn this over to Dean and have him talk about what is a possible vision for Phase 2.
Welcome, Dean.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Possibly. Yeah. Great space, new technology, it's awesome.
If you want a few minutes, I can go on to something else.
Yeah, that works, that'd be great. Is everyone okay?
Very good. Thank you.
If that's okay, Mr. Chairman.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I'll just address item B there, and I don't have a long report on this. You've heard within the last meeting or two from Mr. Dancer, who is the owner of the 905 Arthur Street. That's the grass patch out in front of the theater. That is being pushed forward, and there's been a discussion between Ophelia and Carrie Smith, who's working with Mr. Dancer on possible changes to the DDA, a possible new owner. I think the property has been for sale. I think we believe that Carrie was going to be here to give an update tonight, but she's wound up out of town. Is that right, Ophelia? Yeah, she's out. So anyway, we'll have more detail for you at the next meeting, but did want to let you know that there may be a request for changes there in the offing as well. Any questions on that one?
Thanks, Mark.
Mr. Chair, just want some clarification. Did you say item B? Because we're not seeing an item B on the agenda that's in front of us.
4B.
Did I, was it on the
yeah.
print one, but not on the one that's on the screen? Okay, thank you.
Did you? Okay.
Commissioners, Chairman, good to
Yes.
see you all again. Congratulations on the space. Great to see some other folks that I haven't seen in a while. We did have some subsequent meetings, met with some staff and some members to try and see if there might be a path forward. If you may remember, we went to is a parking option available for an interim period for a future development? Then we brought forward kind of here's how that might work. I think through our conversation, one of my questions was, ultimately we want the best for this community at the end of the day, and if that's finding someone else to develop this property, we'll support that. I don't want to give it away, but we would support that. I think the first thing I want to start out with is just an apology. I know as part of what we started out here many years ago, there was a great vision that we could have a hotel next to what is currently built at the Tillian. And we felt as though we were putting every effort in to try and solve that problem. We haven't been successful. We do have two groups out there that are interested in a hotel, but I don't think it meets the wants and needs in downtown for a boutique hotel. One of them we presented a while back, and I think it went over not very well in terms of a Motel 6. I just don't think it met the character of what downtown was wanting for. So I wanted to apologize, because there was a promise that was made to do something that we're doing our best to solve for now. And currently we are unable to do that in terms of the promises that we put out there. So I want to put that out there, that We've loved this process, we've loved the group that we get to work with, but we're apologetic that the vision of building a hotel there, for us to build a hotel there right now, unless this group gets comfortable with a Motel 6 or something that I don't think is the best option for downtown, likely not the best thing to move forward with at this time. So, just signaling through this process. So I don't know exactly what you guys are looking at, but again, a brief kind of history through the process. Urban Renewal Agency purchased the property in August of 16. RFP and selection was made in 18 with another development company to ultimately build a hotel on that site, multiple building hotel. They ultimately walked away from that opportunity. We were given the opportunity in January of 2022 and then went into a pandemic. And luckily enough, we continue to work together for the vision of downtown to try and find the best solution to start a project during the pandemic when many projects weren't moving forward. From that, we adjusted the plans. Original plan had a parking garage, which I think I mentioned before, that was wrapped in housing. We were trying to be a little more forward-thinking about, hey, might be a parking need in the future, let's try and plan for it. But ultimately, we all decided the best thing forward is actually to build something, and we'll figure out the parking solution from there. Luckily enough, we moved forward in April of 22. We started in construction, and as you guys, most of you have had the opportunity to go through the building, was completed in December of 23. Now we're at the point of trying to figure out how to best to move forward on this phase 2 of the project. And again, originally it was noted as a hotel or additional multifamily. Through the pandemic, we decided, well, the goal is to try and get a hotel there, so we removed that other option from the original set of kind of DDA documents or negotiations. I just wanted to point out that, we have a schedule of performance in our agreement. And all of the things in green up here are the things that have been completed, that we have committed to and completing. So although I'm very apologetic that there are 2 items on here that we have yet to complete as part of our schedule of performance, the rest we have been successful working together to find and build and complete and open the doors and bring 142 homes into downtown. So currently, very broad brush, big picture, what is still standing in our agreement that we need to help find a solution for? And what are we being asked or have been asked in the agreement? Build a boutique hotel and break ground by the end of this year. We said back in May, hey, we really need to know if that's steadfast, we need to do that. And came to a meeting, we said, well, if we can find another solution, even a temporary solution, let's work a little far, give a little more time to see what that might look like. Well, we've kind of blown past the May and into June, and before you know it, we'll be at the end of summer and into the fall. So we have not pushed any harder on a boutique hotel. A lot of it is out of respect for the OB company, OB Hospitality, who we have a lot of respect for and I've known for almost my entire life. So in general, if we were to move forward, that needs to break ground here in December. And the likelihood of that happening is slim to none. So what may happen at that point is probably lengthy, costly, and probably not the best solution for any of us to get into in terms of what does it mean in terms of our DDA right now, and how do we best move forward with the current context of the DDA. So we're coming today with a proposed amendment of terms. Really what I was trying to figure out was how do we give enough time for this other hotel developer to come to fruition or not? So I don't go and end up talking to Brian Obie about how we tried to both build a hotel in Caldwell and neither of us were successful or we cannibalized each other. So the goal and the hope would be is allow us enough time to build what we know very well, which is mixed-use housing, or to know that they're not moving forward on a hotel so that we can spend time to figure out how to bring a hotel operator and developer in to move forward successfully. Because as I mentioned before, 2 hotels in downtown, even from Obie and the groups that we've been working with, said it would not be successful. So we're going to be asking for some flexibility on time. We're going to need more time to get a project into the ground, be it a hotel, or be it what I'm going to show you as a concept in a minute. And then add in some information and some dialogue in terms of timing so that you as a group can look at what the proposal is. Not just a pretty picture now and we'll put a shovel in the ground, because I think I heard there wanted to be a little more context on what it looks like before it actually goes into construction documents.
And then we want to get an understanding of, be very clear, what does it mean if we're unsuccessful to move forward? Because right now in the current DDA, I'm not an attorney, but it's not exactly clear in regards to what are the potential impacts for all of us to go down that path, which I don't think any of us want to. So this is a concept that we're looking at in terms of how to work forward on the phase 2. This visual is a mixed-use, active ground floor retail with 3 stories of housing above it. We think it works in great context to the current project next door. It's a little different unit mix, which we believe works well into the area. The ground floor, which I'll note in a minute, has a couple different retail areas. We have 2 separate retailers that are interested in coming into downtown that we've worked with before. 2 great concepts that I think add to the activity and the vibrancy in downtown Caldwell. This is just another visual setting it with the current promenade area, which we think is a great concept. We're able to activate multiple sides of this project. So this is kind of a cut through. If you took the upper floors off of the building, active ground floor retail, multiple floors of more housing above. What I want to point out in this one is we actually have public space between both of the buildings to bring more traffic kind of from Main Street down to the creek. Our retailers are very excited about that opportunity, and actually they want us to flip this concept over so the retail is actually facing that little courtyard area so they can actually have more activity outside between both of the buildings. They like the context, how it's somewhat protected in terms of wind and other happenings around that nature can do, but they can have active people out there having a meal. The upper floors, these are the 2 concepts. One's a 3-story and one's a 4-story. You'll notice in this one, unlike in our current building, this is not elevator served. We're actually looking at a concept that actually has stair walk-ups, which has a cost savings opportunity, but also has a different user. We have built this concept in other locations next to other elevator served projects. It's just a different user type that we think is actually needed in downtown and balances very well with the current concept that we've completed. So the 2 groups that I mentioned, one's Wilder Hospitality, who has multiple concepts that would be of interest in this area. I think we talked about it earlier and I'm not sure if it was passed on, but we had the opportunity to bring Wilder into our current building, into the Tillian. Because of our commitment to a retailer in there, we stuck with our commitment. They already had a letter of intent, and we could have said, well, we could move Wilder in there. They actually probably would have been a little different. We liked the opportunity, but because we made that commitment to a current retailer that we had an LOI on, we moved forward with that commitment. And then Perea Grill, very excited to expand. Perea likes the opportunity that it's not going to happen in the next year. They want some time to figure out what's the best concept, be it Perea or one of their other concepts that they can move into the area. This is a very high level what a schedule would look like in regards to how to move the project forward. I think if we were to sprint and move quickly, we could be in the ground next summer. There's a lot of question marks on how that process might happen and things that we can't control. But that would be a fast process to get in the ground. This schedule looks at to kind of end of next year. So being in the ground, extending our current agreement out to another year, so the end of 25 to start construction. So with that, to overcomplicate what we're trying to do, what we're asking you as commissioners today is to have us work and engage with staff on this concept or providing enough time so that we can figure out if OB is moving forward or not. And if not, then we can lean much heavier into the hotel side. I mean, I heard some great opportunities. Sounds like hotels along the freeway, but I'd love to be able to draw them into downtown and complete what we promised you guys what we were going to do. I'll stand for any questions.
Very good. Thank you, Dean. Questions, comments?
Chairman, I have a
Mr. Moore?
question for Dean.
Mr. Moore?
Dean, what's the project value of that particular project that you just showed us here?
We haven't actually come up with the estimates yet.
If you had to ballpark that, what would you think?
Probably 26 units. 26 units, 1,000 square feet. We're probably 30, call it, screw this up. 10 to 12 million.
4-story or 3-story?
Three and four, two options. So I assume, I just took the number of units of a 4-story and backed into a cost per door, rough numbers.
So those are apartments, not condominiums?
They could be condos. I mean, if we can find enough buyers, I would love to build a condo down here and have people living downtown and have a different user type. I think it would be great. Again, this is conceptual design. We are doing a condo project in northern Idaho right now, and I have built condos in the Oregon market. That would be very interesting to figure out. If there's enough buyers, I would lean into doing that, definitely.
Did you do some in Bend, Oregon?
We've not built condos in Bend. We built apartments in Bend.
Downtown?
We're on the west side, nothing downtown.
Oh, okay. So that was three or four?
Correct, 3 or 4. There are two concepts. You can go back a couple slides and show us. 27 and 22? 26 and 18. Of studios 1s and 2s.
Yeah.
So the mix could change, that could also change the total unit count.
If it was a condominium, would it have a parking garage? I mean, would it have its own parking unit?
We could probably figure something out. I'm not sure how that would exactly work, but
I've always wanted to live down there, and I wanted to buy the first one when they first came in, but I gotta have a garage for my car.
how many square feet do you need?
1,800.
1,800?
1,600, yeah. But I know, convincing this gentleman to my right, it's gonna be pretty tough.
I understand. The Commissioner Allgood
I
has
see that point too.
hesitation with housing downtown. I understand.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Warwick?
I love the concept. You've seen what people are saying to us already about parking. Unless there's a solid plan for parking, that, residential downtown is tough.
What's interesting is residential, what's great with your guys' downtown is a lot of your activities is kind of post-work time right now. Where in a lot of our locations, we actually have great flexibility because your user at night, the people living there, are offset during the day with another user type. So your parking is actually maximized and used 24 hours a day. But a lot of your activities actually are where people are coming home. So they're going home and people are going, well, I want to go downtown and have a meal.
Right.
So you're loading up a certain time of the day instead of overlapping as much.
I would love the project if there was a solid plan for parking, so that we don't upset people any more than they already are about that issue.
Our final parking agreement, was there a context in there about Hotel Future Phase 2 additional parking?
Yes.
Something, I remember something in
I want
there.
to say that there were additional spaces for a hotel, is what the letter
Was it written as?
says
Yeah.
with the city.
Okay. And I think there was also offshoot other areas. Anyways, yes,
That's Maryland
parking
Street.
solution would be something that's very important.
Yeah, it's a lovely building from
Thank you.
the looks of it, but yeah, parking's got to be a major concern this time.
We talked about it in 2020 about parking, and we're here now, and again, willing and wanting to help to find the best solution. Yep.
Sure. Thank you.
Yep.
Dean, how is the Tillian?
How's it doing?
How's it filling up?
It's going well. I think
Is it
we're
meeting your projections?
well. If you guys remember, we were kind of delayed in our opening. So when we pushed into the middle of winter is not the best lease-up time. But as we opened, we've continued to lease probably somewhere between 10 and 12 units a month, and it's continued to do that. And now that we're going into the leases season, I'm very confident that we'll get to a stabilized point mid to late summer and go in through next year, and then we'll be in a normal cycle of turnover.
Mr. Allgood?
Yeah, I just want to follow up with Mr. Moore. You know my thoughts on downtown residential, but again, I'm not in the business, but I do like the condominium idea. There's ownership there. But at this point, and I realize this is just early conceptual, there's not any opportunity for on-site parking that you can see?
There's always an opportunity with creativity. I don't know what that solution is, just because of the site size.
I heard your response to Commissioner Warwick on the different times, but the struggle I have is, for instance, the parking we have dedicated to Tillian now, those spots are dedicated 24/7. And so that took 95 spots out of downtown, roughly, I think that's the number. And so whether they're used 24/7, they're dedicated 24/7, which took them out of our circulation. And so I don't know whether we would consider this or not, but if we did, again, that's, as has been explained, that's the big hang-up because, my experience being on this board and in law enforcement, you mess with people's parking or you mess with their pets. You'll get more people at a council meeting than anything else. And so it's a really big deal. I mean, I know we make light of it, but the input that we receive both on city council and this board is significant.
Yeah, I bet.
And so it's not something we take lightly. And so, anyway, I do appreciate you coming forward with some ideas.
100% understand in terms of parking. I think that's why we started with parking as a concept when we talked in 2020.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Garcia?
Two great restaurants, by the way. If you could make that happen, I'd move back to Caldwell in a heartbeat. But if this was to move forward, is it something you can get financed right away? And, granted that we find out that the hotel decided to go ahead and be built over here and this become a project, is that something you can move on pretty quickly if it had to?
Mm-hmm.
If there was a definite answer to it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I mean, I think this is a great concept. I mean, I think this is kind of the way the trend's going anymore in downtown areas. I think it covers all the bases. It's another group of individuals that you'd be renting to, different markets. So I like the concept a lot. I mean, I think it's great.
Or sell. I mean, we could sell. There's
Yeah,
two buyers
exactly.
here, so.
Well, 3 with Adam moving.
That's right, Adam's coming back, you're right.
I'll have to talk to my banker.
But I will commend in terms of the conversation about RFPs in regards to making sure that the financial structures are there and, enough support is there. I think the one thing that I would recommend you think about is a check-in during the process. Hey, you're at a certain point before closing, you should be pretty solid in terms of your financial structure and information at that point.
Thank you. Any other questions? Chris, ask your question.
Well, no, I don't really have a question. I'm just thinking, No, I don't have a question.
Okay, all right. Great, thank you, Dean.
Mr. Chair, I don't really have a question either, but as I sit here and think about it, we're going to have the same problem with parking if we have a hotel, as opposed to having this. So we have to figure out how, as a city, we're going to approach parking almost as this is built, as this is approved to be built, whatever it is. We need to know what we're going to do with parking before that.
And I think whether it's this concept or another concept, right, it's still, parking's still an issue. But as you guys mentioned, there was some allocated to the hotel, right? Parking?
There was and this is with the city, there's a letter of intent that spoke to parking spaces for the apartment complex and then additional parking spaces for the hotel. There were some numbers. Dean, I want to say you looked at an 80-door hotel and 40 spaces. It was in that neighborhood, as I recall.
Yeah, I think the biggest concept there is this doesn't add parking, it takes away from your current pool, right? Be it a hotel or other. I think the pressure concept isn't going to change with what we already have talked about with the city. It solves kind of our need in terms of a parking, is it 24 hours or not? But I think that the parking issue wouldn't change until there's a bigger solution.
Right. And then the city would have to amend that agreement to add those spaces because they just went forward on the phase 1. So those, whatever the number is, they are not currently allocated. But presumably would be if a hotel develops. Mr. Doty?
Mr. Chair, I would just add that Councilor Allgood and I serve on City Council. There is no way we're going to allow 40 additional parking spaces. If it's anything, I get that we're already committed with the hotel. If it's anything other than that, that is not going to happen through city council, I don't believe. Clearly, I'm speaking from my perspective, but I think Councilor Allgood might agree with me that there's absolutely no way. Just because what was promised in the past, we may have to stick with that if you build a hotel, but there is no way that council is going to give you any more parking passes, in my opinion, if anything, if they have any approval over that whatsoever. So I don't think that all the bases are covered. And one of them is something we've learned from giving the parking permits as it was. And I'll even accept responsibility, even though I think I was on hiatus when those were approved. Councilor Didenberg was a freshman. He's a freshman, so he's going to claim that he had nothing to do with that too. But if it changes whatsoever from a hotel, then I just truly believe that council will not approve any type of parking permits or passes.
Let me just, Dean, help me refresh my memory. When, I've been on the council a while, so when this project Tillian first started, the apartment count was less apartments than what the final building came out, right? There was a less number?
Back to the original submitted proposal?
Yes.
That's a big brain jog. It probably was less because it was a wrap around the garage, but there was also the phase 2, which contemplated more housing or a hotel. If you remember, the layout was different. The parking garage with the wrap was actually,
Yeah.
so.
And I just remember, as Mr. Hilty said, we had parking spaces for the residential, parking spaces for the hotel. I just remember a smaller number earlier years ago. I don't remember whether I'm
We've
accurate.
gone down from the total parking count.
Yeah,
The
because-
unit count wasn't less.
Yeah, and I do agree with Mr. Doty. Permanently assigning more spaces would be almost impossible, if not impossible, but, yeah.
Well, let's build a garage. What do we, like, I'm ready, let's go.
I'm there.
Any other questions for Dean?
I think this is more of a question for Stephen or Ophelia. What are your thoughts on this concept?
I just figured you guys were tired of me tonight, so I didn't know if you wanted a fresh look, but.
Gotta work those quads.
Yeah. I'm aware of at least one of the entities that is tied to this potential alternate plan, and I've had good discussions with that group, and I know that they're eager to land in Caldwell. They're a good group out of Ada County, as you know, with the Wilder. The uses on the ground floor make a lot of sense. I'm still a big fan of potentially office use. If there's some option to put something like that in there, I would love to see more office space in downtown Caldwell, just in general. I've worked with users that are looking for smaller units that maybe could find a home in something like this. That would be a really cool deal for me. But overall, the aesthetics of it, I do like the balconies and whatnot, and that was something I was hoping to see in the first project, to be frank with you. But in this regard, I look out for those things now, and I say, well, let me make sure that's covered and that's there. But aesthetically, it makes sense, and if we had the, I'm a fan of more density as well. So I would be a proponent of the 4 floors, and I agree completely with the sentiment around parking. I hear a lot of the feedback around parking as well, and I think that needs to be ironed out prior to moving forward tangibly with steps to get something like this going. But I think DeChase is willing to step up and maybe hopefully be part of the solution tied to parking. And but yeah, that's to be determined.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Allgood?
Yeah, Stephen, please. I just like hearing from you.
Hey, thank you.
So is the desire, the demand for office space in Caldwell downtown, has it been strong? Has it been steady?
It has been, Commissioner Allgood, and honestly, we haven't had a lot of inventory historically, and we've just struggled with it. So as office users try to come in from different markets and whatnot, we just don't have the inventory available. So it would be nice to add more inventory in that regard, and I do understand that there needs to be something in place prior to embarking on such a development, but I do think that there's a demand for it here in Caldwell.
Is there a particular type of office space? I mean, are we talking large offices or small two-person offices, or do you have any thought?
I've seen a little bit of both. I do see the smaller users like accountants and, groups that are looking for just little spaces here and there, but we also have others that are looking for 2,000 square feet or greater. And I think Mr. Cooper, although he's not here tonight, he does have some office space in his project, and he was able to secure some LOIs pretty early on in the process on that project.
Okay, because that's very interesting to me. That's an 8 to 5 situation. They go home and the evening crowd comes in, which, again, we're using the same parking spaces 2 times a day, which is what I'm a proponent of. So, anyway, thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Any follow-up questions with Dean?
I have a question.
I just want to say, he proposed something, where do we go from here? This is only going to delay him further, and we're not going to have a parking solution by 2025 unless he's going to step up and say he's building a parking garage. The city's not going to build one, and they're 20 to 40 million. Caldwell taxpayers alone would have to build that through a bond. The city does not have 20 to 40 million to build a parking garage. So I don't see this moving forward. So only to deceive him or delay him any longer, it'll only be used in the future that we were all shaking our heads yes and said this is a great concept. Mine is, it is not. Without parking, which he didn't produce, maybe in his original documents he did, there is no parking for what he's proposing. I am adamantly against any project that doesn't have any parking, 100%. We don't have any contract signed by OB whatsoever. They arrived here and the mayor did whatever he did to convince them it's a great spot without conferring with council. We don't have anything signed by OB whatsoever. So what we do have signed is a hotel to go into that spot. And so unless it's a hotel to go into that spot, none of this proposal is going to get by, in my opinion, any further board or commission from here. Council is not going to approve, in my opinion, additional parking permits whatsoever unless they're obligated to do so by contractor law. And so all we are is just dragging our feet for the inevitable. So again, here we are. We have a proposal. We don't have a vote on the table. It's only going to delay it even longer. So what are we doing? Are we making a decision tonight? Are we not making a decision tonight? Are we going to sleep on this another 2-3 months? And then he'll come back with, oh, yeah, well, you guys waited on it another 2 or 3 months. So, and again, we don't have a decision on the table. So mine is the original proposal of the hotel. Build the hotel, or that's it. That we have a contract signed by his company, not by any other company other than his. So this sidebar agreement with some other hotel company that doesn't have anything in writing whatsoever anywhere is just a pipe dream. At any time, I won't even say pull out because they're not even technically committed by any sort of document. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Does anyone know what the requirement for parking is for a new structure in downtown? Is there one? There isn't one. Okay.
There was a question to be asked from down at this side. I don't remember if it
I
was.
just had a question about, I had a question about, well, first of all, I don't want to open up my mail and see another line item on my taxes for a parking garage. And Dean, let me ask you this, office space, in your opinion here, and which I think that's, and with what Steven's saying, I think that's the future in downtown Caldwell.
Just any concept on rates? Those new tenants coming in, what they're paying? We just built an office building in downtown Boise. To cover the new cost of construction of that, we're at $35 triple net. So the cost makes it pretty hard.
Yeah.
I'm all in.
Yeah, right, good luck, right?
I'm all in, right? Let's find a solution. And if there's enough people that are willing to afford to pay for that, let's build it. I think it's it overlaps the parking. It solves a lot of questions on a lot of things, but I just don't know if you have enough users at a certain level Now, if I was building a big box with red iron on the freeway and cheap as possible, probably get rents down to a level, but on a smaller site, we'd have to get very creative with the structure to build that to make it a viable project.
So you're saying $35 is a stretch down here?
I don't, honestly, I don't know. I don't know. $35 is a stretch in downtown Boise.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So.
Absolutely.
If we had some great tenants in there and we could get creative on how it's built.
Yeah.
I'd love it.
Yep.
Mr. Allgood?
Again, I'm just thinking about, going off what Commissioner Doty is saying, this is not an action item. We're not allowed to make any vote or decision. So I don't know where we're going with this. My goal, at the end of the day, whether it's Dean and his group or somebody else, is that we get that lot filled with something as soon as possible. Right now, it's doing nothing besides being a dirt lot. And so that's why I asked previously to have another meeting with Dean, and then, Dean came today, which I appreciate. And I am for making downtown vital, and whatever that takes, I'm for. Again, we don't need to talk about the parking thing more. I think that's pretty clear, but I don't think this body is doing anything to change the original contract at this time, and this is not a voting, so we can't make any decisions. This is just a discussion, but I just think we need to keep our heads going and figure out how we're going to get this project or something in that hole, so it doesn't end like the downtown Boise, the hole sits there for forever. So anyway, that's my thoughts.
Okay. Any other comments? Great, thank you, Dean. Thanks. Mark, if we could have you come back up, maybe give us a couple of things to think about procedurally, what next steps might be, since this was not an action item?
Yeah, certainly. So we've talked about it before, but this, if there's a change from the hotel concept, that needs to be embodied in an amendment to the DDA. And that's really what Dean's proposing. Let's amend it to look like this. And so I think the message seems clear. We've got a parking issue. I don't know whether there's a creative solution to that or not. But we as staff are happy to work with Dean and his team. We had I guess we called it a committee. Mr. Chairman involved you and Chris and Dave and Stephen and I think. And Commissioner Doty, I appreciate your comments. I get where you're coming from. Makes sense. We just as staff don't know whether the rest of you think it's worth, maybe having a video conference to talk about, whether there's a solution to parking on this. So I think we're still not making any final decision, but maybe the question is whether it's worth, us scheduling another video conference and talking about, parking or putting Dean to work to try to figure out something creative, or whether it's this dead on arrival. I mean, I think that if staff could get some direction from the commission on that, then we sort of would know what to do without, waiting another month. So that would be helpful. If there's some kind of consensus, or not even consensus, but enough support to at least give it a shot. That, I think, is what would be helpful to hear.
Okay. Comments, thoughts on Mark's proposal?
Mr. Chair, I can repeat it again. Well, should we talk about parking again? So without parking, you got to remember there's a city council, elected officials that have to make this decision and approve this after we do here. The pulse from them is that if you don't have parking, you're not building residential downtown. It's just that simple, unless something changed within the last 10 minutes since we've been here, which it could have. I doubt it, but it could have. Again, it's just my perception. that it will not make it past city council. So no matter how much effort we put in, no matter how many meetings we have, no matter what we come up with and say this is a great idea, in my opinion, it will not make it up past council without parking. It's just that simple for me.
Thank you.
You have two of us here, so ask Counselor Allgood, and then you'll know guess what two people think.
Yeah, I would not dedicate more parking to any project, as Councilor Doty said. If we can come up with some other scenario, but I would not dedicate more parking spots to individual users. I think we've reached our limit there. And that's what I was talking about with Stephen earlier. If we do an RFP on that other spot, it would not involve residential or parking if I had anything to do with it. It's just not viable considering the number of parking spots we have.
Mr. Moore, any comments?
No.
Okay.
I said enough. Thank you.
All right. Doesn't look like a Zoom meeting is in our future next little bit, but we will expect this back as an action item, and we'll take it up next month. Okay, that takes us to our commissioner reports. Anything anybody wants to add or comment on?
Mr. Chair, just something, go ahead.
Can this end start? Yeah? Okay.
I can't see your mic. I can't see its screen, so I apologize.
Go ahead.
Oh, you did? Go ahead, Dave. I think you're probably going to talk about the same thing I am, maybe Special Olympics.
Yeah, Friday
Go
was
ahead.
a good
Go
time
ahead.
over there. We had Idle Special Olympics in town, and gosh, I don't know how many thousands of athletes we had there. My bank, Zions Bank, best bank in town, I think, gave $12,500 to that, and I've done a lot of work with Christy Kraft before, so she's put in a lot of time in this area, so it went over really well. Lions tested athletes' eyes as well on Saturday. Our Lions Club did. And today, we just started paint-a-thon. We're painting a house. It's about 4 or 5 blocks from here for an elderly person that needs it. So we're on the giving mode. I like that.
Good job. Chris?
I had something, but I forgot it. Come back to me, please.
All right. Adam, anything? Okay. Julie? Brad?
It's going to be fast. Counselor Allgood, I'll just say ditto to what Dave said, and thanks to his bank, they did donate. I think Dave was quite humble there. Quite a donation to the Special Olympics, and it was quite a honorable event to attend.
Yeah.
I remembered.
Okay.
I just needed a second. But no, I wanted to shout out to Stephen. When you do your reports, economic development reports, I really appreciate the economic information you provide. It just helps. It's information that I find valuable. I appreciate you taking the time to do that.
I'll just add, middle of July, I think it's the 24th and 25th, is that Urban Renewal, kind of a workshop sponsored by the state. And if you have a chance or want to enroll for that, see Ray Lynn or her second in command here, and we'll get you signed up for that. So, do we have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Do we have a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.